Gelato and Sorbet are two minor characters in the whole of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, though they have a major impact on the plot of Golden Wind itself, as they act as a catalyst for La Squadra's actions during the entirety of the part. Though, since the characters' deaths were so early on in the story, they never really got much development, and we never get to see what kind of people they were or what possible stands they might have had. So I thought it would be a fun little thought experiment to go through the information we have on the characters and see if we can formulate an idea of what kind of stand that Gelato and Sorbet might have had. So before we get too into stand predictions, I'm not going to start right away with that. I want to run through the information we do have on Gelato and Sorbet and try to understand which musical reference would be the best to use for their stand and which abilities would fit their characters best. And the best place to start is learning the meaning behind their names and design. So Gelato and Sorbet are names that work in a pair, as they are both frozen desserts which are very popular in Italy, though they aren't prepared the same way and actually have some major differences in their design. You see, Gelato is an ice cream-like dessert which is made of either custard, cream, or milk alongside sugar and a flavoring of your choice. It results in this melt-in-your-mouth creamy-like frozen treat, where Sorbet is a non-dairy product. It consists of water, sugar, and again, flavoring of your choice. These names were likely chosen to play into the theme that Gelato and Sorbet were sort of an item or a couple in a sense, as they both have names after two very similar Italian desserts. Now, design-wise, Gelato and Sorbet seem to take major influence from the history of the band that Araki was really into at the time of writing both Part 4 and Part 5. This being the Italian pop duo, Savage Gardens. Savage Gardens is a band that is comprised of two male leads, Darren Hayes and Daniel Jones, and they found themselves reaching international success around the 1990s, with hit songs like I Want You, To the Moon and Back, and The Animal Song, with I Want You also being one of the songs that Araki would go on to request and later did become the ending for Part 4's anime. Along with this, a lot of Savage Garden songs focus mainly around the themes of love and desire, and this, built upon the band's very homoerotic fashion sense and album art, led to many rumors about the duo themselves being gay. Gelato and Sorbet is an obvious reflection of this design element, as it lifts most of the basic concepts of the duo without ever directly referencing them. You have both the blonde and black haired dude who lie really close to each other, and there's a bunch of rumors going around that they possibly are gay for each other. Though, funny enough, later in life, Darren Hayes would come out and openly confirm that he is gay, but Gelato and Sorbet were long since dead at this point. Though this isn't the only reference buried within Gelato and Sorbet as characters. You see, their brutal death is also a direct callback to a bit of information we learned from the Godfather movie series, which Araki is an absolute fan of. The information in question is about the personal enforcer, Luca, disposing of a group of Al Capone's goons. First he ambushed them, then tied them up and gagged them with hand towels. He then began to torture the men, as he brought out an axe, put them on a table, and began chopping them up from the legs first. He forced the others to watch, though after he finished killing one of the guys, he noticed that the others were already dead. They had swallowed their hand towel and suffocated to death out of sheer fear. This is near beat for beat the death scene of Gelato and Sorbet, of course with the added element of their tragic romance being cut short, though the reason that they were executed is very important for their characters, as it gives us a glimpse into their profession. You see, Gelato and Sorbet were two members of La Squadra, but also members of Passion's data analysis team, meaning they likely did research for La Squadra to help them perform assassinations as efficiently as possible. And the last bit of important information that comes directly from the source material is that Gelato and Sorbet were absolute psychopaths, meaning that they did not care who or what they sold out. The only loyalty they seemed to have was to La Squadra and to money. So with all that information in question, I feel like Gelato and Sorbet's stands would benefit them in their trade. Now, to be fair, some of the stand designs I have come up with are based off of extremely minor observations about details that are presented not in the source material, but in David Productions' new anime, which gives us a glimpse at their personalities more than the nothing that we had in the source material. So these are just a perspective on how I feel their stands might evolve from the characters we now have versus the ones that are technically the source material characters. Let's start first with Gelato, the blonde boy. I gave him the stand Chain to You. Chain to You is a tool stand which takes the form of a large camera. The camera functions very similar to that of a real camera and can take regular pictures. It also has an S on it for Sorbet, because Sorbet was the closest thing to his heart besides his actual soul. The design I found most fitting for the camera is the Camera Obscura from the Fatal Frame series. Stats-wise, it has no destructive power, a C in speed, an A in range, A in durability, B in precision, and C in developmental potential. Now, ability-wise, I gave Chain to You one major ability, which is actually really simple and very similar to Adam Hart Father, and this is called Binding Evidence. What Binding Evidence does is that when a person's image is captured in a photo by Gelato, within the span of 24 hours, Gelato can bind that person with stand chains. These are supernatural chains which flow from someone's heart, and it makes it so that even if they're a stand user, the stand itself will also be bound along with the user. These chains can last up to however many hours are left on the photo in minutes, which is because each photo that Chain to You takes can only last up to 24 hours before it dissolves away completely. So if he takes a picture of you, 9 hours pass, he has that many hours left in minutes to bind you. Name-wise, it's based off the Savage Garden song, which Darren Hayes claims is inspired by his first ever gay kiss at a nightclub in Brooklyn, being that the kiss helped him realize his sexuality, and it chained him to that memory for the longest time. This stand reflects this in how the photo of the person is the memory of that person, bound to them for 24 hours until the picture vanishes and goes into hiding, much like Darren had to do with his own sexuality. This would also be the reason that the S for Sorbet is on the camera itself, as it links Gelato back to Sorbet in a romantic way. I also got the idea to base Gelato's stand off of photos from a reimagined image of La Squadra that David Productions made for their anime. In this, it showed Gelato and Sorbet in a unique and new pose, one where Gelato is staring intensely at a group of images, while Sorbet is kind of not really caring too much. Also, Gelato's lazy nature means that he's not a type of person who cares about living in the now. Someone who would rather capture a moment and relive it later in life than have to be there in the now at all times. Though, speaking of living in the now, Sorbet is the exact opposite of Gelato in this sense, as my conceptualization of his stand is Wants You. It takes the form of a large Japanese torii gate with a mechanical face fixture in the middle. Along with this, two handle structures on each arm of the torii gate, along with wiring skewed all around the body. I based the design of Wants You off of the large structure found in I Want You, the music video by Savage Gardens. It's the structure that Darren Hayes sets himself up on, and I decided to give it a reimagining with a torii gate, since it is a gate between the normal world and the world of the supernatural. Stats-wise, it has no destructive power, a D in speed, D in rage, A in durability, A in precision, and D in developmental potential. Wants You is an amazing information gathering stand, though it only has one major ability, this being Data Dive. What Data Dive does is allow Sorbet to set up his stand and place a piece of data before him. He can then enter the memory of that data, and while doing a data dive, Sorbet's body becomes completely immobile, like 20th Century Boy. An example for the ability would be, say Sorbet got his hands on that photo of Donatella Una that Diavolo took. He could then set up the photo and data dive into the history of it, which brings him to the exact moment of time which that picture was taken. He can then view that scene from a 360-degree perspective, but he cannot interact with anything within the memory or change any events whatsoever. He is only a spectator of that moment, but he can collect such valuable data, it doesn't matter that he can't change anything. Essentially, it is a stand that allows Sorbet to live in the now at any time that he chooses, while also allowing Sorbet to collect the most accurate data from any person or thing. Now, name-wise, the stand of course comes from Savage Garden's biggest hit, I Want You, which is a song all about strong desires towards beautiful women, though it was later revealed that I Want You is actually about Darren referring to his homosexual desires, with lines like, I want you, but I don't know if I need you, implying that he is uncertain about his sexuality, though the lines, I'd die to find out, implies that his willingness to experiment, which then leads into the example you found in Chain to You, which is also the reason why Sorbet Stand has the G in it, since that connects to Gelato, so they have each other's name in each other's stand, hinting at their romantic feelings for each other. Now this desire to learn the truth and always want to be in the now is why I gave Sorbet this stand, as of course, being part of the data analysis team means you need to find a way to dig up information that would be hard to find. So a stand like Sorbet would fit perfectly within that group. Along with this, it has great synergy with Gelato's stand, as it can take a picture of someone, then Sorbet can data dive into that person. And the stand was also partly based off of Nero explaining to the rest of the group that Sorbet is not the kind of person who would go unpaid, meaning that he's a very thinking in the now kind of person and would not wait for his payment. Also, I thought it would be ironic that the man who can dive into art and photos and analyze them to exact detail, I also thought it would be ironic to give him an ability that which then plays into his fate, so a man who can dive into art or pictures and analyze them into such detail would then be chopped up and himself turned into a detailed art display. Now, again, I should say, this is purely me as a fan speculating at what Sorbet and Gelato stands might have been. They could have been anything at the end of the day. Though, it's also very possible that they were just standless, much like Luca. Though, it's very unlikely that they were standless in the universe, because unlike Luca, they aren't just regular grunts. They're part of La Squadra and Passione, which is a group of assassins and a group of mobsters. So Gelato and Sorbet not being stand users is very uncommon, especially for such high positions. Though if you ever wanted to see what Gelato and Sorbet might have been like in the running of Part 5, I personally feel like Araki might have done that when he created Squalo and Tiziano, as they are a group of 2 stand users who focus on long-distance attacks and information gathering and information denial, and were so close with each other they might have been mistaken for lovers. Now of course, this is only just my theory on why Squalo and Tiziano were made, and I'd be shocked if they weren't somehow inspired by Gelato and Sorbet, but it is not 100% confirmed that they are inspirations of those characters. So let's get back to talking about Gelato and Sorbet, and another reason why I think they would be stand users in universe, because the sheer confidence that they had on display when they went into investigating the boss's identity showed that they weren't completely afraid of him. If they were working with La Squadra, they must have known that stands existed, so if they had no stands, I don't think they would have gone and investigated nearly as much. Which is also the reason why I designed their stands to be something that was useful but not completely overpowered, as they needed to be not strong enough to handle whatever enforcers the boss would throw their way. So this is why I made their stands mostly non-combat stands, so they would be the weak link of La Squadra while also being a vital member of the team. So I tried to balance that out, and hopefully I did that correctly. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I also wanted to stay consistent to Araki's naming themes and how he designs characters, so I also try to do that. But if you have any ideas, feel free to share them below. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/ManyAnotherBadGuy. And specifically, if you want to see more stand guessing like this, you have to tell me below, because I don't know always. And if you want to investigate the boss's identity, I hear the best place to start doing so is at buyshimonetta.com, so you can buy yourself a copy of Shimonetta. Each copy comes with a letter to the boss's official name. It's amazing. Buy multiple.